Hey, and welcome back to GirlChatSports. This is episode 29. So welcome. My name is Melissa. I'm one of your hosts, and of course with me is the lovely
Stephanie.
Hey, Steph. So I literally just got off a plane. My New Orleans trip was a little bit longer than expected.
Oh, you missed a lot of exciting things in the sports world over the weekend.
I saw one in person, which I don't think was too exciting, at least for my taste. However, there was a lot of stuff that was going on, which is crazy. We will get to that here in episode 29. And just to let you guys know, we've got some, of course, NFL news. We'll talk a little about my trip to New Orleans, the Saints and Seahawks game, the Cowboys and Eagles game that went to overtime. We've got some wonderful arms of the NFL that lovely Stephanie here picked out for today. And we'll talk a little bit about the World Series that is currently on right now. I believe Indians were up 1-0, or no,
Yeah.
We'll double check that as we'll keep you posted into the podcast. And we'll also talk a little bit about some college football, the new rankings that came out and bumped my guys from 4 to 5, as well as some basketball news because the NBA season is completely underway. And so
Exciting times for a sports fan. All this sports happening, and it's hard to determine what to watch.
I know that there was like the Cleveland Cavs played yesterday, and so was Game 6. So that was kind of crazy for people to do. Monday Night Football was on at the same time as Game 5, I think.
Basketball's in full swing. It's the semifinals in MLS soccer.
So much that is going on in sports. But we can cut to my little trip in New Orleans. It was only supposed to be about 4 days, and I got stuck up until today. I literally just got off a plane and am here. But Seahawks Saints game was anything but happy for me towards the end. We were struggling throughout the game. We were continuing to have issues scoring a touchdown offensively. Defensively, that seems to be not a problem. So we've been like 23 possessions without having an offensive touchdown, it seems like, since prior to this game. We lost. It wasn't a great loss. There was some bad calls. One of them was a 2-yard touchdown by Brian Cooks for the Saints. The Saints have a terrible, terrible defense and have had about 8 penalties basically every game. However, this game they only had like 2 penalties for 10 yards, which seemed odd. And the fact that their defense actually played, because most teams have come through the New Orleans and like ran them over as far as like it being some really high scoring game on both ends. Obviously, the Saints have a great offense. Drew Brees is going to always do well and seems to always do well, but we couldn't stop them. And it was heartbreaking to be there because I went to the Rams game and they lost, and now I've been to the Saints game and we lost. So I'm just not sure if I should be going to any more games or away games for that matter. Gosh. Anyway, so we lost. New Orleans is beautiful. I loved every minute of it. It was like 80-something degrees. The breeze was nice. We got to go up and down the French Quarter, Frenchman Street. We were staying on the West Bank, and everything. And there was a huge like voodoo festival, which is kind of like our Life is Beautiful out here. So there was a ton of people in town for that. The game, as well as Halloween, is huge out there. There were Seahawks fans all up and down Vernon Street, so it was a wonderful time. I really, really enjoyed myself. And that was my game. And I felt like when I saw your game afterwards, I was kind of watching the second Seahawks game because the Eagles are kind of like my second team, even though not officially. But you know how much I hate the Cowboys, so I just wanted them to lose.
Well, if you did not see the game versus the Eagles, we did win in overtime with a touchdown pass to Jason Witten. It was Prescott's worst game so far. He threw an interception in the end zone, and it could have been a couple more interceptions had the Eagles not totally dropped a ball that just landed right in their hands. But he did pull out in the fourth quarter. Des Bryant was back. He did get a huge touchdown late in the game, grabbed 4 passes for 113 yards. Sean Lee stepped up his game with 11 tackles.
Sean Lee, who was not Asian.
Exactly. He had two of the biggest plays in the games when he initiated a sack and dumped a running back for a loss.
Wow.
And Tyrone Crawford showed up. He had 1.5 sacks and recovered a fumble. One of the major things that kept us in the game is that Chris Jones, our punter, had a huge 30-yard scamper on a fake punt.
Yeah, I saw that little trick play there,
Which was really nice and kept us with the ball. And then, of course, Dan Bailey nailed all of his kicks, so that certainly helped.
That's helpful when your kicker can get do what his job is.
Exactly.
And Dez is back.
Yeah.
Ass crack and all. Did you see his pants? I mean, I know it wasn't just me, but his pants were like falling. I'm watching the game thinking, oh my God, do you see his ass? And my friends were like, wait a minute. And they didn't quite catch it, but you could easily see his ass crack. I don't know if his butt got bigger while he was out or if his pants got smaller, but I'm going to need Des to pull his pants up. No sagging allowed when only you have a jock strap on underneath. So
I'm perfectly fine with that. In other Cowboys news, Ezekiel Elliott's investigation on abuse claims have come up again. His lawyer should have just kept his mouth shut because he is going to the NFL saying that they should just let it go. Apparently, his ex-girlfriend filed a complaint alleging that he'd hit her several times. However, there were witnesses that night that said they didn't see anything like that happen. It appears that the Ohio City Attorney's Office said prosecutors declined to pursue any charges after they reviewed the evidence that basically said that there was conflicting and inconsistent information about the incidents provided. But I guess under NFL's policy, they still look at it like even though he wasn't charged, that they should do something as punishment.
Well, and the thing is that we just got done with discussing the whole Josh Brown incident and him no longer being with the Giants, with the Giants not really taking any kind of action against his not in charges, but the accusations of domestic violence in his previous relationship. And he had even done like a 1-game suspension prior to not having a job, period. And it's just like, I know, the higher ups, Goodell, Jerry Jones, everyone's kind of all in the same pot, may not want Ezekiel gone from their team for very long. But if any of these accusations are true, you have to kind of take that and, follow the same rules as you've done before. We were having an issue with Josh Brown not getting the same treatment that Ray Rice and stuff were getting. However, now we're hearing about Ezekiel Elliott, we can't just not do anything because he's a great player.
Yeah, I think that a lot of scrutiny is happening with the NFL because they're letting some of these things slide.
Yeah, that's too bad. My other question regards, so Jason Garrett's eyebrows were this extremely hard red, burnt orange color. I don't know. I know he's a redhead, but it's almost like he dyed his eyebrows prior to the game. Did you not notice that? Did you see that?
I really did not pay attention to Dez's butt or his eyebrows.
I was paying attention to the game. I just get sidetracked sometimes when I'm staring at someone. I'm like, wait a minute, his eyebrows look real. They're like Carrot Top's eyebrows. But anyways, regardless of the fact. Other news, let's talk about Goodell a little bit more. So him and Cam Newton had a big talk, it sounds like.
Yeah, so Cam apparently went to Goodell about some hits and whatnot that are not being called against him. And I read an article about the theory that the NFL is no longer giving Newton the benefit of the doubt because of a game in 2015 where he was running towards the sideline and took a seemingly late hit after throwing the ball. I guess after the game, Cam put a referee on blast, accusing the veteran official of saying that you're not old enough to get that call. They weren't able to prove that he actually said that, so I think that officials are a little upset about him either lying about it or maybe making it a public spectacle instead of just handling it in-house. So potentially that could be the reason why they're not giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Well, and I think, a lot of people also think that because of Cam's size that he's a lot bigger and stronger and maybe it takes a harder hit to get him down. But some of those hits, like these shots at his knees and his leg, parts of his leg that are more prone to injury, the concussions he's dealt with, I mean, some of these hits are kind of excessive, I guess, in nature. nature. But and it does seem a little unfair that maybe he's not getting the same calls. Like if those are the same hits that Tom Brady was getting, I just have a feeling that we wouldn't have this issue as we would with Cam Newton. So, maybe it takes you being in the league, 15, 16 years for that to happen. But I just feel like that's not okay. It should be across the board in everything.
Yeah, well, I think that his talk actually brought something good out of it because they did determine that his complaints were warranted. And they said that they'll address the crew going forward with it.
Wow. Well, that's
Speaking
good.
of hits, did you hear about NFL Network's Brian Baldinger encouraging the Eagles to put a bounty out on Ezekiel Elliott?
No, I seen this story and I was like, wait, what? First of all, I don't know who Brian Baldinger is, and so I excuse me for loving sports but not knowing his name. And then hearing that he's a professional NFL analyst and is encouraging that the Eagles have a ban on Elliott. Like, that's very unprofessional. But I did find out, I think today they actually gave him like a 6-month suspended, not sentence, but it gave him a 6-month suspension from work without pay. So that should be interesting on how he decides to
Take that, Cowboys haters.
Hey. We hate with passion.
Some other news in the NFL, Jamal Charles, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, is on the injured reserve list. He will miss at least 8 weeks.
He's going to be out for a while. So, and honestly, I'm not sure if Kansas City may make a great playoff run or not. But what I thought was funny is that they actually signed Bishop Sankey, who was an old Husky running back, as well as from the Tennessee Titans, who had been released a little while back. So that should be interesting to see him be playing. C.J. Anderson for the Broncos is also out for the season. I think we discussed a little bit last week that he was injured. He's now officially out for the season with his knee. In regards to the Kansas City as well, Alex Smith leaves the game twice this weekend. He left on the first and the third quarters. He's not going to be playing this weekend on Sunday. Actually, Nick Foles will be starting, and we haven't seen that guy for a while. Also, happy news for me and my fantasy. Big Ben's been taking in first team reps. It's unsure of his status for this Sunday, but he could possibly be ready, which means good fantasy points because I've been losing my fantasy games. I actually had Alex Smith picked up this last week, and he sucked ridiculous. But now I'm happy to hear that Big Ben could be coming back. Also out for tomorrow's game on Thursday. We've got Tevin Coleman's out, Doug Martin's out, and T.Y. Hilton. So it's kind of crazy. These running backs are getting injured over and over and over again.
Hopefully you also don't have Trent Williams from the Redskins because he's been suspended for 4 games for violating the NFL program on substance abuse.
You would think that you'd either be really good at covering it up by now or passing the test, or you just would abstain from using while you're playing.
Yeah, so this is going to be a significant blow to the Redskins offense, which I'm okay with.
I wonder why, NFC East. Are you guys East? Yeah.
Yeah. Number 1 in the NFC East.
Also, Andre Johnson announces his retirement. He's had 14 seasons, mostly with the Houston Texans. He was top 10 in the NFL history in catches and yards. And so he's going to be leaving. There was another retirement as well. I think that one's in basketball, however. Ray Allen officially retired. He's at 41. This is Jesus Shuttleworth. We'll get back more to him on the second half of our podcast. We'll just finish up here with a little bit of NFL. I think there was 2 other things I want to discuss. The Vikings have lost 2 games in a row. This game to the Bears. Who would have thunk it that Jay Cutler comes back from an injury and beats the Minnesota Vikings 20-10? Jordan Howard, he had 145 yards and a touchdown just in the first half.
It's a fall from grace.
Unbelievable. So we're going to cut to a commercial break real quick, and we'll be right back.
Palmer Alexander for the Inner Zone Sports Show. Want to tell you about our sponsor at Gossip Pasta. Now she's at a new location at 291 Chesterfield Mall Food Court. She's open 7 days a week. Make sure you get in on all of the goodness. And don't forget the food is made with a bunch of love. Only at Gossip Pasta. The food's so good, it'll make you say, Shatorta, give it to him, queen.
Hey, I'm Kiana with Gossip Pastas, and when I'm in the lab, I'm always in the zone.
All right, and welcome back to Girl Chat Sports. Quick shout out to the guys over at In the Zone Show and In the Zone Network for bringing us some great news and information, as well as handing over a couple of those fellow sponsors like the commercial break we just had. So we want to get back into it. We covered some NFL earlier, discussed a few things. Fantasy, we all know that my teams have been sucking this month, or this season for that matter, but I'm hoping that the second half of the season is going to change that. We shall see. In regards to college football, though, so my Huskies did awesome. We actually beat Utah in Utah over the weekend. College game day was there live, which was really interesting to see, and it was a close game. It was a real close game. And in New Orleans, it was funny because there were so many Husky fans there, too, because a lot of the Seahawks, obviously, Seahawks fans are from Washington, so they were Washington Huskies or Cougar fans. So a lot of Huskies were there in New Orleans watching the game as well. The new standings did come out, and Washington, even though we won and we beat a ranked team, Utah, we are now 5. So we are 5th because we got bumped down by Texas A&M, who is 7-1. But apparently, since they have the harder schedule and the bigger competition, they bumped us out. So we are still in the top 5. However, we are 5, and basically we have to win the rest of our games. Even we don't have any more ranked teams in our schedule, but we do have Washington State for the annual Apple Cup. That's going to be a game that we have to win for sure, too, and it is going to be tough playing in Pullman in late November. So
there's only 5 undefeated college teams still: Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, Washington, and Western Michigan. In fact, over the weekend, both Baylor and West Virginia got their first losses, and neither of them have a win over a ranked opponent. So that was interesting.
That's crazy, yeah. And there's a big game coming this weekend, Alabama and LSU. So you've got the number 1 ranked team against the 13th ranked team. And also there was a tight game against, I think it was Ohio State this last weekend. So they had another close game, barely winning again. They play Nebraska at home, which will be another good game that, these teams got to keep winning if they want to keep it in the playoff picture, I guess you could say.
Number 13, Boise State lost to Wyoming over a safety.
Ooh.
That was pretty interesting.
I think that dropped them way back down. I think they were down like at 23 or 24 from what I last saw. So that's interesting. What else anything else in college football news? I know Washington, we go and play Cal this weekend, so that hopefully will be another win for us. We were currently 8-0, and we haven't been 8-0 since 1992, which is pretty crazy. I'm really excited for my guys.
Some pretty interesting record-breaking information. Ole Miss senior Chad Kelly threw 465 yards, even though they lost to Auburn, breaking the school record set in 1969. He also holds third place with a 420-yard performance in another loss. So that's actually another record that the top 3 passing games in school history all came from losses.
Wow. Well, like we mentioned earlier, Ray Allen has decided to retire at 41. He also was a 10-time All-Star, and he basically said that he's completely at peace with himself. So Ray Allen did play for the Sonics at for a little while, as well as Celtics and a couple other teams throughout his career. So we're happy for that. I'm always wondering, what made you want to decide to retire, 5 games into the season? Why not the beginning of the season? Why not the end of the season?
Well, he was on the Heat and hasn't played since the 2013-14 season. 18 years. Good for him.
That's a lot of years. 41. Other basketball news. So, like we mentioned, when I was in New Orleans, I was a little upset because I flew in late Friday night, and apparently Friday night was also when the Warriors played the Pelicans in New Orleans. So I just missed that game. I was a little bummed. But Anthony Davis had hit 50 points that game, which was still lost. And then he actually had two other 45-point games, which they still lost. The Pelicans are 0-4 right now. I believe, just like last year, the Sixers are winless. And I think there's a few other winless teams at this point. But the other news is that Golden State isn't doing so great so far.
Yeah, they really are mediocre at best right now.
I'm not sure if it's the addition of Kevin Durant and just the chemistry between them, or if there's something else going on there. But they're winning games, but they're not winning the games. I mean, obviously they lost to the Spurs. Yeah,
they barely beat the Suns. Barely beat the Pelicans.
But it's still super early in the season. We're like 4 or 5 games in, so we'll see how that goes. One thing that I am very fond of so far is my Bulls. They, I think, are 3 or 4-0. Dwayne Wade and him being able to pass alley-oops to Jimmy Butler. I mean, these guys, are starting great. They haven't started this well since the 96-97 season when they actually did win the championship, and they were 69-13. So I'm hoping for a Bulls comeback.
The Spurs haven't lost a step either. They will certainly challenge the Warriors in the West. Kawhi Leonard is finally stepping up and looking like MVP material.
Kawhi is amazing.
They needed someone to step up.
Well, we know last season on Girl Chat, we did a story about him and his hands. His hands, if you ever notice, his hands are probably the size of an iPad. Just so you can visualize that. That's how big his hands are. It's pretty crazy. So, good for the Spurs. They always seem to be doing so good anyway. So,
Of course, I do need to mention Kobe Bryant. Apparently, he doesn't miss basketball. Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit?
I guess he admitted that he did watch a couple games at the beginning of the season here. But he's busy with his business endeavors. He just launched Nike's Kobe AD on the Day of the Dead. So he's staying busy, making money.
Sure. I'm sure he is. Womp womp. Didn't he have a kid? Did Vanessa have their child?
Yeah.
Quick update, since we are in the middle of the Game 7 of the World Series. The Cubs are up 6-3 right now. This is pretty amazing. It was 3-0. Now it's 6-3. They're kind of battling out pretty hardcore right now in Cleveland.
Yeah, well, if the Cubs win, they become the only 7th team to win the World Series, winning games 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, they were down 3-1 and have come back, which is amazing. What I don't get is that they always talk about these droughts, like the 68-year drought for the Cleveland Indians, however many games. It was even more, I think, for the Cubs. My thing is that there's teams like the Mariners who have never won a World Series, so I think that's a pretty high drop myself. But yeah, so it's Game 7. I know I watched Game 6, which was pretty amazing. That Addison Russell who hit the grand slam, he actually had 6 RBIs in that game, last game, and he is pretty handsome. I don't know if you caught the picture of him, but that boy, yes.
I did not.
Here at Girl Chat, not only do we talk sports, we talk about the guys behind the sports and
the guys behinds.
And the guys behinds in arms. And then all that good stuff. So, interesting to see how this World Series will go off. Either way, both cities deserve it. And if, in fact, it happens to be Chicago, I know Chicago's going to have quite the amazing weekend and party tonight. I'm sure Indiana will go crazy as well if they can come back from being down 6-3. And I think it's the bottom of the 6th right now, so we'll see how that goes. In a little bit of awe news, it was Halloween this weekend, and Steph shared this hilarious story of one of the Denver Broncos cheerleaders. She was dressed, how most of the cheerleaders always dress up in these sexy little Halloween costumes. Well, this girl had one of those blow-up dinosaurs on, and she nailed her routine.
You really have to see it. It's hilarious, and she was on point in that dinosaur.
So shout out to the Broncos cheerleader who wore the dinosaur, because not only did you rock your routine, but you didn't feel obligated to be in one of the like typical sexy Halloween costumes. So that was really cute. I really enjoyed that one.
Are you getting excited for college basketball?
I can say I am. My Husky men did good last year. The Husky women were in the Final Four last year, so I'm really excited to see kind of what my teams do. Of course, of some of the other ones as well. What
Yeah,
you got?
well, the AP Top 25 poll is out for men's, and it's no surprise. Duke at number 1, Kentucky at 2, Kansas at 3, Villanova at 4, and Oregon at 5.
Oh, what? Well, this should be interesting, most definitely. So before we leave you guys, we wanted to just touch base and discuss our arms of the NFL, of course. We did have a couple good ones. So Melvin Gordon is the running back with the Chargers, number 28. He has some very nice arms, as well as Michael Johnson. He's a defensive end, number 93 for the Cincinnati Bengals. And our throwback arms of the NFL for this week is Reggie White. Reggie White was a defensive end for the Packers, as well as I think the Eagles, and I think he even came back from retirement for a year for the Panthers as well. He passed away back in 2004, but he was quite a contributor to the NFL in all of his seasons, and so he also had some really awesome arms too. But yeah, so that about does it for us today. We're cutting it short just by a few minutes so that we can get back into a few other things, since I literally just got off the plane. I got to get myself ready for the regular rest of my work week, and we appreciate you listening in and joining us. Please feel free to reach out to us at GirlChatSports on all social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter. Look for Steph
At S_wash.
on all social media, as well as me at Seattle, the number 4_life. And feel free to email either one of us, Melissa or Stephanie, at girlchatsports.com. Hope you guys have a great night.
See you next week.